The night was quiet, the kind of silence that felt heavy, as though the city itself was holding its breath. Inside the towering glass mansion on the hill, wealth dripped from every corner. Glittering chandeliers, golden railings, and marble floors polished so bright they almost blinded. Yet amidst all this grandeur, Daniel sat alone in his leather chair, staring blankly at the city lights below. He had everything money could buy, but nothing money could heal. The silence was unbearable until it was broken by the faintest sound outside his gate, a trembling voice that carried through the cold night air, soft, weak, yet piercing enough to shatter the walls he had built around his heart. "Can you help me, please?" The words cut through him like a knife. They weren't loud, but they were desperate. They weren't commanding, but they carried the weight of someone who had no one left to turn to. Daniel stood frozen, the question echoing in his mind. For years, he had insulated himself from the world, hiding behind his fortune and the belief that problems could be solved with money or ignored altogether. But that voice was different. It was raw. It was human. It was impossible to ignore. Sparkles, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of small acts to change lives, please like this video, share it with others, and subscribe to Kindness Tales so we can keep bringing you true and touching stories that remind us of the goodness still left in the world. Comment below what kindness means to you. Your words could inspire someone today. Sparkles. Daniel hesitated before finally walking out onto his balcony and peering down toward the gate. There, under the dim light of a flickering street lamp, stood a young woman. Her coat was thin, her hair tangled by the cold wind, and her face pale with exhaustion. She looked like someone who had been fighting battles alone for far too long. Her small hands clutched a worn-out bag, and her shoes looked as though they had carried her through endless miles. She didn't look up at the mansion towering above her. She simply stood, staring at the ground, her voice breaking again as she whispered, "Please!" Memories Daniel had buried long ago rushed back. His mother's face, tired but kind, asking strangers for help when he was a boy. He had come from nothing once, long before his empire rose. He knew what it felt like to beg for help and be turned away. But over time, he had taught himself to forget, to harden his heart, to climb so high that he never had to feel that pain again. Now, staring at her, he realized those wealthy walls had not saved him. They had imprisoned him. Slowly, he walked down the long driveway, his footsteps echoing against the stone. The woman looked up, startled, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and hope. For a moment, neither spoke. He noticed the way she tried to stand tall despite the weight dragging her down. She wasn't asking for luxury or favors. She was asking for something far simpler. Compassion? Daniel asked her what had brought her here, but she only lowered her gaze and whispered that she had no home, no food, and no one left. Her voice cracked, and tears gathered in her eyes, though she tried to hold them back. There was something profoundly humbling about the way she fought to keep her dignity, even as she admitted her need. It stirred something deep in Daniel, a part of him he thought was long dead. He invited her inside, though he half expected her to refuse. To his surprise, she followed, quietly, almost nervously, as if stepping into this palace of glass and marble felt like trespassing into a world that wasn't hers. Inside, she stood awkwardly in the grand hall, her eyes darting to the sparkling chandeliers and polished staircases. Daniel could see her discomfort, the way wealth around her made her feel smaller rather than safe. He brought her food, not the gourmet dishes usually prepared by his staff, but simple bread, soup, and warm tea. She ate slowly at first, then hungrily, tears slipping down her cheeks with every bite. He sat across from her, watching silently, realizing that for all his riches, he had never known the gratitude reflected in her eyes, as she ate a meal she hadn't expected to find at night. Over time, he learned her name, Emily. Her story unraveled piece by piece, not in a dramatic flood of confession, but in quiet moments, whispered truths she offered cautiously, as though afraid that too much honesty would push him away. She had once been a student with dreams, but life had turned harsh. A parent lost to illness, debts that crushed her, jobs that disappeared, and finally, no place to stay. She had been walking, city to city, clinging to scraps of survival until her body gave out. And yet, despite it all, her eyes still held a fragile spark of hope, a belief that someone might care enough to see her. Daniel listened, really listened, in a way he hadn't listened to anyone in years. For so long, he had surrounded himself with business partners, lawyers, and shallow companions who cared only for his wealth. But Emily's words came without agenda. Her pain was real, her struggle raw, and her presence reminded him of the boy he once was, scared, hungry, and uncertain. As the days turned into weeks, Daniel offered her a place to rest, clothes, and eventually a chance to work in his estate's library where she could organize books and documents. She threw herself into the work with gratitude, treating every small opportunity as though it were a gift. And with every passing day, Daniel felt the cracks in his wealthy walls widening. He laughed again, not out of politeness but from genuine joy. He felt the warmth of human connection return, something his money had never been able to buy. But not everyone understood. Friends and associates questioned his decision, whispering that she was probably taking advantage of him. They warned him that his kindness could be exploited. For a moment, doubt crept in. He had built his empire by being cautious, by trusting numbers over people. Yet every time he looked at Emily, he saw the sincerity in her eyes, the quiet resilience in her spirit. She wasn't there for wealth. She was there because she had nowhere else to go. And maybe, just maybe, fate had brought her to his gate that night for a reason. Emily, too, began to transform. With rest and stability, her face regained color, her eyes grew brighter, and her voice carried more strength. She shared her dreams again, to finish her studies, to help others who knew the pain of being invisible, to give back the kindness that had saved her. Listening to her, Daniel realized that helping her wasn't just an act of charity. It was the start of his own healing. Months passed, and the mansion that once felt empty became alive with warmth. Emily's laughter echoed through the halls, and Daniel rediscovered the joy of simple things, sharing a meal, discussing books, or watching the sunrise with someone who saw beauty where he had only seen profit margins. His wealth no longer defined him. The kindness he gave did. One evening, as they stood on the balcony overlooking the city, Emily turned to him with tears in her eyes. She told him that the night she asked for help, she had nearly given up hope completely. She had whispered that desperate plea, not expecting anyone to answer. But his decision to step outside, to listen, had saved her life. Daniel felt his own tears rise. For years, he had lived behind walls built to keep pain away. But all it had done was keep love out. Now, because of one trembling voice, his heart was open again. And so the story of a wealthy man and a broken soul became something greater, a story of two lives mending each other, of compassion breaking down walls that money could never touch. Sparkling Heart, if this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video, share it with friends and family, and subscribe to Kindness Tales. Your support helps us continue creating stories that remind the world of the power of empathy and second chances. Sparkling Heart, before you go, we'd love to hear from you. Comment below with the words, "Kindness changes everything," if you believe compassion can truly heal hearts. Because sometimes, all it takes to change a life is a trembling voice whispering, "Can you help me, please?"